What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about laser heights and why it's important for your lasers to connect and how laser heights affect that connection. So, why do laser heights matter? Well, heights often decide whether your laser actually will connect, and if you're firing a laser that doesn't connect, it won't threaten your opponent, and that's bad. So what do we need to keep in mind? Well, in my opinion, there's three kind of main categories: high lasers, low lasers, and mid lasers, although we will go after specific types of lasers because, of course, this is just a generalization. So let's start with high lasers. The most common application of a high laser is to punish people coming down from above you, usually off a platform. You can see in this example, we have a little Marth who is trying to come off and probably do something like a forward air as you approach. And by placing a high laser close to the platform, that will most likely interrupt Marth. Whereas if you were to do a low laser like this, it's really unlikely to have that effect. Marth would probably make it down, or at the very least attack you before the laser connects with Marth. So you can see how a high laser like this is threatening, a low laser like this is not. High lasers also are very commonly used to interrupt aerial attacks. Here we have a Falcon doing a short hop nair, but it's really pretty much good against any aerial attack, even say, for example, like a full hop attack, like a Fox full hopping. Oftentimes a higher laser will be more likely to kind of interrupt them in that motion, and you'll see people do like retreating high lasers as a way to deal with that. Here's another example of a high laser. This is a very, very common way for Peaches to approach Falco, where they kind of float just above the laser height. So even though this laser does not connect with Peach, as she comes down to attack, the laser protects Falco and punishes her. And again, you can imagine if this laser was a bit shorter, she might get the attack out and might even escape the laser entirely. Other good things about high lasers is it makes it difficult to jump in the first place, which will create a kind of ceiling against the player even if the laser doesn't connect. So we have on the side an example of a Puff try to jump, they get hit by the laser, and this is a good example because both Puff and Peach have pretty bad vertical mobility. So unlike Falco, who can just quickly full hop to a platform, Puff has to kind of burn each jump. Peach is the same. She's kind of famous for dealing with not being able to deal with the top platform. And in both cases, lasers, particularly high lasers, make it difficult to kind of get off the ground. Whereas the low laser, they're going to be able to sort of start their jump and just barely jump over it. So high lasers, good at creating that ceiling, good at dealing with approaches from platforms, good at dealing with aerial attacks. However, there are some downsides. It generally just loses to low profiling, which in some cases is because of a character's height. We have a picture of Ices here, but other examples are Fox and Falco, Jigglypuff, Dr. Mario. You get the idea. If the character is too short against the laser, it's not going to affect them. This is a more extreme example with an extreme height, but this does happen all the time, especially in examples of like dashing or crouching or wave dashing, where the start of a wave dash is the jump squat, which is kind of when you squat down as you're about to jump. And we see that right here where Sheik is wave dashing through Falco's laser because Sheik kind of has to crouch down. And this is a really common thing in the matchup. So the way to counter this is to use low lasers. And before I continue, mid lasers will sometimes work as well, but they won't always work, especially against characters who can get really low to the ground. Characters like Game & Watch, Sheik, Puff, Kirby, Pikachu, all can kind of crouch really low down. And Sheik is a great example because we often see her doing stuff like wave dashing through lasers and dash attacking through lasers. Also, you can see here, this is an example of a laser that would hit Puff crouching. This is something I strongly recommend Falco players practice. You can just go into Uncle Punch, set the CPU to crouch, and then try to connect a laser. Even though this looks like it's just barely going to go over Puff, this will connect, and it's surprisingly difficult to do. It's very easy to not connect this laser, and you should be able to do it because it just kind of helps interfere with options. So as you can see, if you shoot high lasers against Sheik, you're going to not interact with a lot of options that she commonly uses, like wave dashing through your lasers into like an F-tilt or dash attacking or any of that. She's just a very low profile character when she crouches, when she dashes, etc. However, low lasers have their own downsides, the obvious one being that you can just jump over them. Here's a Falcon doing a short hop nair, really, really common approach in that matchup. And if you're doing a low laser, it's just easy for Falcon to get around. One good thing, though, where you can kind of flip that weakness on its head is being able to jump over a power shielded laser. So if you don't already know, power shielded lasers reflect back at the same height. If you shoot a high laser, it will reflect back as a high laser. If you shoot a low laser, it will reflect back as a low laser. So what we have here is a Falco who is shooting a low laser initially, and the laser we actually see is one that's already been reflected back, and then Falco immediately does a second high laser. So shoots the low laser, jumps over it, and immediately shoots a second high laser. And this is a great way to deal with Marth's power shield game. We can actually see a clip here of Zane versus Mango. I'll just skip ahead here. Right here, we're going to see it quite a few times. I have a little bit of issues with the video. So we're see it right now. There it is there. And you can see like this aspect of the laser game is like incredibly important. You'll see in this sequence, Zane power shields once. He does the laser, jumps over again. The next laser, he jumps over, then immediately power shields another laser that interrupts Falco. And then Mango tries to adapt by doing another laser that interrupts the dash height, but also is something he can jump over and shoot a second laser. So that's like a little niche application of kind of a low laser, high laser situation. Really, really common in the matchup. Really, really important to understand. Other things about low lasers. Low lasers are generally harder to power shield. And the reason for this, like the technical reason, is definitely beyond the scope of this video, but it's just worth knowing as a general rule. And against Marth specifically, there's a low laser that Marth just cannot power shield due to his bugged shield. You can see the bug here, if you're not already aware, and Samus has the same bug. Basically, when Marth is crouching or dashing, the shield starts as if he is standing. So this is a really good visual example where you can see like Marth is crouching down and his shield should start like kind of in the center of his body, but it doesn't. It starts as if he was already standing, and that actually makes power shielding easier for Marth. It's why you see Marth's like Zane consistently power shielding like that. It can turn a 2-frame window with a power shield up to like a 7-frame window. So really, really big difference, makes it several times easier. But it has a flipped downside where because of, again, the mechanics, which I won't get into, it can make it so that you actually can't power shield super low lasers because of where the shield starts. So Marth actually cannot power shield the very lowest lasers. And that can be a useful mix-up, which we'll get into a little bit later. So next up, we have, of course, mid lasers, which, as you can imagine, are going to be a compromise between low and high lasers. They're more effective against Fox and Falco in particular because, as I showed earlier, they're just shorter. You know, their high lasers aren't even going to interact with them. One example of this is the beak laser, which is the term SP the Falco player uses, and it's particularly useful in the Falco Ditto, which covers aerial attacks and dash. So you can see it's kind of the beak because it's right at Falco's beak, and you can see this beak laser will interact with aerial approaches, and it will also interact with dashes. So a lot of the kind of neutral game and punish attempts in the Falco Ditto are going to be covered by this laser. And this is a really good example of a laser with a specific objective that you're going for, but even this will lose to certain things, like you can crouch underneath it. So this is a good example of just like how much nuance there can be, where if like this is a good kind of general laser to go for, but of course, as we've already shown, if they're going off of a platform, you're going to want to use a higher laser. If they're doing things like crouching under it, you might want to do slightly lower, etc. Another interesting mid-height laser, and this is like mid-low, is what I'll call the dangling laser. Now you can see right here, there's a part of Marth's hitbox that hangs down when he does things like a forward air, and it's actually that part of the hitbox that you're trying to interact with. So this is right before it connects, and then here it is connecting. And you can see like it's pretty low, and it will still interact with Marth. So what makes this powerful is one, it still is easy to jump over in that example we gave earlier, but it also will still interact with at least short hop approaches from Marth. So it's a useful height to know. And again, it does fall under kind of the mid-low height. Here again is that example of jumping over the power shield. We have the lower laser on the left and the higher laser that was followed up before. And you can see this is like quite a bit lower than the example on this side. So it shows just how low you can go while still interacting with Marth's short hop. So now that we know all that, how do we pick between which laser? Well, as you can see, each laser has its strengths and weaknesses. We've shown time and time again, like something will beat one option, but then lose to another. But there are going to be situations and matchups where one laser is more favorable over the other. One good example of this is against Falcon. Falcon is just such a tall character that high lasers will actually connect with him, even if it seems like they won't. And when he is crouching, you can still shoot a pretty high laser and it will connect. This laser does connect in this clip. This is him doing the little wave dash, which, he's not doing that as much as someone like Sheik, but all of these cases, you can shoot fairly high lasers, not the very highest, and they will work. And since Falcons, so much of their neutral is just dash dancing and doing short hop aerials, high lasers are very, very often the best choice against a Falcon. Of course, if they have a really strong power shield game, there are some downsides to that. But actually in this clip, you can kind of see if this was instead a reflected laser, when Falco does like a jump squat, he can actually shoot a laser and then like start a second jump, and the reflected laser will pass above him. So just in general, you kind of want to focus on using higher lasers more often versus Falcon. Another example where I feel higher lasers tend to be better is against Peach, which we talked a little bit about earlier, where Peach is really like the float height above Falco's laser, and they don't do that many grounded options except for like say dash attacks and that kind of thing. And high lasers will also interact with that because Peach, is so tall. This is her dash, and you can see any laser below this height would hit her, and this is quite high. So, compared to something like Sheik, who has a very low dash attack, if Peach were to come in with a dash attack here, you have quite a bit of like mid-high to high lasers that would stop her. However, this is not the case in every matchup. We've talked about Sheik being a character where low lasers are good against her, and we see that with it engaging with the wave dash and with the dash attack. But what about if she's coming down from a platform? How often do we see Sheiks retreat to her platform, do some needles? That's where you'd want to be mixing in higher lasers again. And there's also the fact that her short hop is so high that if she was doing kind of aerial approaches, this low laser isn't as good anymore. So not every matchup's going to have kind of a perfect answer to every situation, but the number one thing that people do wrong is they just kind of shoot lasers without thinking. They're just blindly firing, and that leads to kind of poor coverage. You really want to be mindful of your lasers, and I hope that this little presentation has helped you guys realize kind of some of the things you can improve. One other thing, this is sort of a bit of a different format for me. It's more off the cuff with kind of visual examples. The goal here is to try to be able to produce more content more quickly, at the expense of some production value, but also hopefully it will still be useful. It's also just like a little less draining to make, balancing my time. A lot of my videos take quite a while. So if you enjoyed this kind of short form, let me know what you guys think. If you want to see more like this, I'll definitely make more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.